Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Strength Game Podcast. I'm your host, Nick O'Brien, and this is episode number 108. The Strength Game is a weekly podcast dedicated to discussing all things physical culture with the coaches, athletes, iron enthusiasts, and experts deeply embedded in the strength game on both sides of the profession, both as coaches and as competitive athletes. I want to thank everyone who has subscribed to the show, who has liked, shared, rated, commented, reviewed. All that support allows us to continue to bring on expert guests and highlight more individuals in the strength game, just like our guest today. Also want to thank our sponsors. Family owned and operated since 1976, Samson Equipment has been specializing in full turnkey weight room build-outs from planning to installation. Based in Las Cruces, New Mexico, Samson provides professional weight room solutions for those looking to lead the way in advancing our strength conditioning profession. Coaches have relied on Samson as their top resource for all their weight room renovations because they provide the finest materials and design, product customization, and the most reputable customer service in the business. If you're in the market for elite level strength equipment, weight room renovations, or upgrades, be sure to check out samsonequipment.com to see how Samson has been delivering clients a long-lasting yet affordable product for over 4 decades. Also want to thank our sponsor, Cerberus Strength. Trusted since 2012, Cerberus is making the best strongman, powerlifting, and strength sports equipment and accessories, ensuring the ultimate competitive edge. Every one of their products is tried, tested, and proven by top-level athletes worldwide. If you're in the market for the highest quality strength and conditioning gear and equipment, be sure to check out cerberusstrength.com and use promo code STRENGTH_game to save on your next order. Also want to thank our sponsor, Sport Kilt. Founded in 1995, Sport Kilt is the very first company to begin making casual kilts in the USA. Taking the traditional kilt concept, they crafted a casual kilt using modern materials that is perfect for Highland athletes and casual kilt aficionados alike. Sport Kilt offers an option for people looking for a tartan pattern kilt that is less expensive, comfortable, lighter, and durable, yet machine washable. So whether it's competing in the Highland Games, connecting with your heritage at a family gathering or wedding, or just casually spending some time around the house or wanting to stand out from the crowd, sport kilts are made for everyone and for every occasion. Make the ultimate Celtic statement by checking out the full selection of kilts and stylish kilt accessories at sportkilt.com, and be sure to use promo code TSG to save at checkout. And in this week's episode, I am joined by Michelle Pifer. Michelle is an associate director of strength conditioning at Rutgers University, where she works with the field hockey and women's rowing programs. Pifer was promoted from her assistant strength coach role in 2023 and served in a similar capacity at the University of Pennsylvania from 2019 to 2021 before arriving at Rutgers. Pifer began her career as an intern coach at Bucknell University in 2014. From there, she worked as a fitness specialist at Weston Fitness in North Wells, Pennsylvania, and also garnered experience as an intern at UPenn, Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania, as well as a return visit to Bucknell. Pifer was a wellness supervisor at Bloomsburg University of Pennsylvania from 2017 to 2018, before becoming an assistant strength coach for 1 year at Swarthmore College, arriving in 2018. Outside of coaching, Pifer herself is very active in her own right as an athlete. She's a multi-sport strength athlete, having competed in both bodybuilding and powerlifting competitions over the course of her career. I'm excited to have her on the show today. So with all that said, let's get in the game with Coach Michelle Pifer. What's going on, everybody? Today, I'm excited. We have Coach Michelle Pifer on the show. How are you doing today, Coach?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. We're we talked a little bit before we got going. You're in spring break. My spring break is about to kick off at next week, so I'm glad we were able to find some time to get you on today, and hopefully get you out of here after this, and so you can enjoy the rest of your day. But without any further ado, like really kind of touch on how you got started into training, eventually competing in strength sports. Like, what was your kind of inception into the weight room and training yourself?
Yeah, I was a former soccer athlete and a track and field athlete. Mostly I played basketball, but those were like the two sports I was the most successful in. And then post high school, I tore my quad. So collegiately, it was weird. Back then it's like PT wasn't as strong and prevalent as it is now today. So a lot of my offers or just conversations completely just went ghost. So from there, I was like, well, what am I going to do now? Went to community college just to be like, just try a bunch of classes. And after 2 years, with a lot of good conversations with mentors, but also just my parents, my dad was like, do something with sports. So then I went to Bloomsburg and then I got into exercise science. And then from there, I had some really good professors that I just could build relationships with. And they were like, yeah, what you want to do sounds like you want strength conditioning. I was like, what's that? And then they linked me to Bucknell University with Jerry Schreck. And he's still there. He's a goat. He's great. And him and Cassandra Byers, she's no longer there. She's in the private sector now. And Cody Miller, who's also in the private sector now. They all were the first people to really like take me under their wing and be like, this is a barbell. This is how you hold it. This is the knurling. Like they allowed me to be a sponge, and forever grateful for that. Cause now I'm knowing what the Ivy League and the Patriot League's like they're saints for taking the time to do that. Um, and then from there, Coach Struck was like, if you really want to do this, like how green you are, you better like find an internship where you could live at because you need more. And so it took me like a week to be like, well, what do I want to do post undergrad graduation? And then I just went to Philly because I'm in Montgomery County area. So I'm like 30 minutes from the Philadelphia area. And so I drove down, went to Drexel, met Mike Rankin, who's still there, great guy. Went to University of Pennsylvania, like not even an hour later, walked down, chatted with them, just got to know them, very quickly. Got to see the weight room. And at the end, Christy Bartlett goes, do you want to be an intern here? And I'm like, I didn't know it was that easy. And it's like, great. And then was there, planned to be there for just like the summer, then turned into 6 months, then turned into 2.5 years. And throughout that time, I would just like waitress so I could survive. So I was waitressing and being there from like 6 a.m. until 4 p.m. And they would see me lift, but I was a cross country kid and a soccer, athlete. So they were like, you're not strong. And I was like, I thought I was. I was like a buck 15. I thought I was squatting 95 pounds for reps. I thought that was great. And they're like, no, you're weak. And then Coach Steele, he was a longtime mentor, still is, but he's in the private sector now. And he just goes, well, what are you training for? And I was like, nothing. And he was like, pick one out of the three. And he was like, yeah, you can do bodybuilding, Olympic weightlifting, or you can do powerlifting. And out of complete vagueness and not asking any questions, I was like, obviously bodybuilding. That's probably going to be the easiest out of them all to do. No, no, it wasn't. But it was the right, I think it was the right thing I needed at the right time. Because before as I was interning, I was just getting up and being on the floor. And that's tiring, but it's nowhere the same as what a collegiate athlete does. And so it's extremely eye-opening, like to get into the weight room at 4:30 to do cardio before even the athletes got in at 6, then to be on the floor, be mentally present for that, then to lift for an hour and a half plus post those sessions during lunch instead of eating lunch, then quickly inhale lunch, then to be on the floor again, then to do cardio right before I left to go waitressing. And it was just this massive experience of like, this is probably just a smidge of what they go through. or if it is what they go through, got it. It's really hard. So trained for that, and then did that for 5-6 months with Coach Steele and with other implements of like Tracy Zimmer, she's at University of Florida now, and Christy Bartlett. Like they really helped develop me and teach me how to do that, and did that, won that one. I get back and Coach Steele was on a high. I mean, we both were, but like he was in a high of like training. He's like, what are we training for next? And I was like, powerlifting, I guess. Like, since like my body comp was like super optimized at that point, I just had a feeling that like I could do well in that like much lighter weight class. I was very naive. I was under the wrong impression. Like those girls in that weight class, they were strong. I was very naive. So probably a little too overconfident. So I still had to train. I had to lift really hard that day, but yeah, it was two really good experiences. But without like Steele and Tracy and Steven Brindle and Christy, like I wouldn't have had that experience because I just knew I should have done it.
No, that's great. That's awesome to have such a great collection of mentors, especially in the beginning, and then them push you towards like sports. And like if you're not a college athlete, I think it's important that you do exactly what you said and kind of find a way to still stay involved in training, but also manage all the other aspects of it. Because if you didn't play college sports, it's a lot harder as an intern to just kind of come in, do a couple hours, go home, maybe work a second job. But as like collegiate athletes, they're going to practice, they're going to lift, they're going to film, like they're going to classes, they have a social life, they're going to do homework. Like there's so many things. And if you don't really have kind of a taste of what that is and you throw training into the mix, you're missing a very like important key element, because the training part a lot of times is easy. It's recovering from it and then showing back up the next day and consistently doing it over and over again, which yeah, the bodybuilding conditioning is definitely out of the realm for me at all. But it's great that you like touched on multiple ones just to kind of get a feel for everything.
Mm-hmm.
I know a bunch of those people. That Philly area is huge, and like people don't really realize it either. By you going to visit Drexel and Penn, they like border campuses. They're literally touching each other. And yeah, I met Coach Rankin years ago. Went to visit Coach Shrek and Coach Cody Miller when they were both there as well too. They picked me up in the rain from a game and like showed me the weight room and everything. So even not having them as mentors, like all those like a lot of those coaches that had the opportunity to meet, like still took time out of their day to come show me around and like hang out with me when I came to visit. So I I, I wouldn't think anything less like that they would not like take you under their wing and show you everything they have. So you definitely had some great mentors growing up in like the profession. So that's kind of awesome. So what does it kind of look like nowadays? Like transitioning, you went from a high school athlete to bodybuilding, immediately into powerlifting as soon as you kind of got back, which is definitely crazy to go from that. Like, what's it look like nowadays, with your schedule on the road all the time with Rutgers field hockey and then having rowing back at home as well? Like, what's your day-to-day look like for coaching wise? And then what does maybe your training look like as you transition to this full-time job?
Mm-hmm. I'm on the floor doing the weight room sessions 5 days a week, just the way that it works out for the most part. Like in the fall, it's really like max like three, it's just a very condensed 3 days. And then the off season, like now it's 5 days, but that's off season training. So that makes sense. And then for field hockey at practice, because I do all the load monitoring for catapult, I'm with them every day. So just depends how many days coach says we're going to practice. For the most part, it's in season, it's two, just with the way that the competition schedule happens. And then in the off season, it can vary, but normally it's 5. So like especially in the beginning of the spring, coach is great, does a really good job of balancing competition, but also we got to get training in. So typically don't practice on the weekends until recently. And then in April, we'll have a game every Saturday. So it's still very like nice compared to the end season. So it's still a lot, but it is definitely manageable. Like it's good.
There you go. And since you have a soccer background, you have like track cross country background, and then you did some bodybuilding as well. Like you started to appreciate like what the conditioning side looks like. And field hockey, for those that like don't really know a lot, there's a huge conditioning element to it, especially like being kind of hunched over, like bent over in that position the entire game for the most part. And then high speeds, you're doing all the load monitoring and everything. How did kind of your experience playing like team sports? And then it's definitely a different type of conditioning, bodybuilding wise, but how did like those experiences kind of influence and help you? And then when you did get field hockey, I'm assuming for the first time, unless you had them when you were at Penn, um, what was that like trying to get up to speed with just how different your conditioning was to how they operate like at a Division 1 level for field hockey?
As a previous athlete, I go, oh my goodness, why didn't we have this? Because it can be very impactful. But then as I transitioned into like bodybuilding and powerlifting, it helped me understand what tools you can get from there to put in your toolbox to help your athletes, but also then being in the athletic mindset, the strength coach mindset with an athletic team that they're trying to win a championship with their sport, what things to emphasize at what time and what really is important like for them to be successful. So am I, it's it helps you do checks and balances. What do you really need to emphasize, but what tools do I have? And then with the conditioning and catapult, it's a wonderful tool. It's not an end all be all. Like at the end of the day, sometimes you just got to get the reps in and you're just like, all right, it's a little bit more today. And it is what it is. But it's really, it's a tool and it's how your staff's going to integrate it, collaborate, execute, and analyze before and post. It's really the staff that makes everything matter, not always the tech. Like the tech helps, like catapult, love it. I've also used VX Sport. Great. Like love that team that's there, love that device. But like at the end of the day, it's who you're using it with. So I think it's a great tool to visualize everything, to track everything, and then just to have really good constructive conversations of what do we need and how can I help get there with the things that we know now.
Right. Was that already in place before you kind of arrived and started working with the team? Like, did they already have some load monitoring software they were already utilizing, or did you kind of introduce it when you came in?
Yeah, I was very lucky. It's easier when it's already there, for sure. I've had to do it the other way, and it's a lot more patience for sure. But yes, when I got to Rutgers, they were using Polar, which I was like, okay. And it's like, this is fine. And they were using it for GPS and heart rate monitoring. And then it just was really good timing. A lot of my story is it's really good timing. And they were at the end of their contract deciding if they were going to renew or go a different direction. And again, Meredith being the amazing person she is, she goes, Michelle, what do you want? And I was like, uh, what are the limitations? What are you looking to get out of information? And she's just an awesome person where she just goes, tell me what you want. And I was like, okay, well, in a perfect world, catapult and or VX Sport. And so through trials and conversations, we just landed on catapult. And that's what we use today.
That's perfect. No, that's great to kind of come in and already have it, but also more importantly, have a coach that's bought in and like, hey, this is your domain. This is like the objectives and the goals that we have for the team, but you're the subject matter expert. So tell me what you want and I'll get the resources that you can do it. And it definitely pays to have someone supportive like that kind of leading the helm of the ship, because then it frees you up all the time in the world to do your job and do it successfully too and at a high level. when it comes to like some of those load monitoring softwares like Catapult and VX Sport, like I've used different versions of those and stuff in the past. How much, since you're on the road and you've kind of shifted roles from like what you were doing, like we talked about Ivy League and Patriot League and like even I think is it called Swarthmore? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
I
They're in
got
the
it.
Centennial Conference. Yeah.
Okay. So like when you're at some of those schools, like you kind of sometimes you have less, but also at the same time, Ivy League, you have multiple teams, so you might have the same resources, but you're divvying up everywhere. You've been
Mhm.
able to kind of narrow your focus down and work with two teams. So how was that kind of transition? And then now that you kind of get to work with the load monitoring software, are you able to be a little bit more proactive versus reactive since you have fewer teams? Because that used to be the issue I had with having like three or four teams. I ended up not being able to be at enough things that I'm like, hey, I don't want the live system because I can't make changes for you there. It feels more reactive. Is that kind of seem like the case for you, being at everything for field hockey?
Exactly. Yep. Yep. So, um, I mean, there's still times it's 100% reactive because, like I said, like I respect, Coach Meredith. If she goes, we need to get these reps in, like I try, like good, like she's doing what she knows best, right? And like she's the best of the best. So like she says we need more reps and it's going to be more meters. Cool. And then there's this respect of being like, okay, we're just going to talk about, do we need to adjust anything later? And but from having 7 teams, um even especially at the division 1, I'm sorry, at the division 3 conference, like a lot of it wasn't even reactive. It was empowering the consistency because they don't have mandated training and in season. So my role, I felt a lot, was building the belief of why you should come in, and like why coaches want to give me those 30, 40, 50, minutes to come in out of their time allotment, out of the time that they're given. Like, why is that important? And if anything, that just gave me really big skills and communication from then till now of knowing why you do what you do, and why is this said thing super important, to be able to say it concisely but also relatable, like make it relatable. Because if I can't make it relatable to the group of people that need to hear it, it's just hot air. Like you're wasting everybody's time. So if anything, it just that time really refined my skill of communicating, working with a really wide range of athletes, like really, really wide. Some are really, like, you would think they could have been in a D1 sector, others that like this is their first time really training. And so, um, you know, that experience there, and similar kind of to at Penn, where, now you're in the D1, you have more resources. Like I don't just have a jump mat, even though that was still a great tool into Division 3, because that's still kind of expensive. So like that was awesome to have a Division 3. Where I go to Penn and I get back to being familiar with, we used, Sparta Science, and, was using that, was able to do some pre-post surveys for teams, starting to get a little bit more, like you said, granular, but it's a ton of work. So it was more or less of trying to find out what are the true, like, low-hanging fruits. What's going to really shift things that need to be shifted? Is it going to be a bar graph? Is that going to shift these low-hanging fruits, or is time, effort, and being consistent with my messages, is that what's going to shift? So for me, that those are like the things that I really learned with 7 to 8 teams. And then truly the impact of sacrifice, because when you have 7 to 8 teams, you want all teams to be as bought in and as impacted as possible. Well, something gives at one point, and it's your time, it's your personal time, it's your family time, whatever that may be. And that it's still a hard sacrifice, but seeing the impact it had with my teams and with my sport coaches, that taught me where, like, that's something I have to decide. how successful do I want to be is how much I'm willing to sacrifice,
Uh,
which is athletics, right? Like how much
yeah.
are you willing to sacrifice to be the best? So inadvertently it kept teaching me along the way of like how successful do I want to be.
Yeah, that's a hard pull too, like being at those levels or Ivy League for anybody that has kind of hopped in and maybe started interning for football or basketball like early in their career and they think, oh, this is or the coach that their mentor they have only has like two or three sports or one sport. It's like they think, oh, this is how it is. And then you go to an Ivy League school or you go to Harvard or you go to Penn, Dartmouth, and 35 plus. I think Harvard has 42 or something like that. And they're just running teams out. And you do start to see and like define what sacrifice looks like. And you have to try to make every single team that comes in there the most important priority team at that time. And it definitely does take a lot out of you. And Division III, like you said, like I've been in that, but most of my teams were really successful at that level. So we honestly, I would forget all the time that off season was voluntary because it just became the expectation and the culture of the group to come in. But I've seen it at schools where you're forcing kids to come in, like Division I, and they have and at that point, I'm trying to sell them on why this is important. I was like, this is completely backwards. I just came from a Division III school where the culture was we're going to be in here all the time and they demand more. And now I'm at a Division I school and they're demanding less and there's too much on their plate. It's like, we're not even doing half of that.
Mhm.
It's definitely weird. But so for anybody that's like going into like kind of their beginning role, since you've seen both sides of it, you've had 7+ teams, you've had eight, I think 8 teams at one time. Like what would you say for like, is there more of a benefit for going in and kind of getting granular in the beginning and kind of getting to the minutia where you learn everything about a sport? Or do
Mhm.
you think it's more important to kind of get a little dose of everything in the beginning? Is one more important than the other, or did you think for yourself like get as much experience as possible?
For myself, how green I was, yeah, but also like for how green I was, yes, because it showed me a lot of different athletes, how to help them, how to regress them, how to progress them. Like, how can you individualize a 45-person team at one time? I used to have fencing, 45 people, and you have Olympians, and then you have people that just walked on that have never stepped in this, don't even know what a dumbbell looks like. And how do you individually progress them and regress them at the same time? And so, like, and how do you put that system in place that you're successful? Not just them, but like you're successful during that hour with 45 people. And so I think regardless of how green you are, so like, yes, if you're super green, yes, chomp at the bit, get as many teams under your belt as possible. But even if you are more refined in your knowledge and you feel like you're ready for 2 teams, I still think getting 5+ teams is super influential because it still gives you more contact points of, are my systems good? Are my cues actually as efficient as possible? Are my programs as efficient as possible? Do I have all the communication tools under my tool belt to deal with a laundry list of personalities? And that's not in a bad way, but everyone's different and everyone communicates different and everyone, yeah, they're just different. And so for me, I have a very like diverse group of people I've worked with that I've just learned things that have worked and haven't worked for me when communicating or planning. And so I've had a lot of mistakes, I've had a lot of successes, and like I look back and revert to both of them a lot. And even with myself, colleagues, like just talking about, oh, I remember this time I really messed up. Like, it doesn't hurt you. And especially if you're young, like you're in your 20s, it doesn't hurt you to make that step because in in a blink of an eye, 4 years goes by fast. 3 years goes by really fast. 2 years is like you just breathed. And that impact of experience um, is priceless. Because imagine not having that and then being in a really high pressure, high performance area, and you made one silly mistake, you lose credibility. But if you're in an environment where you can learn and grow, and those around you are like, hey, like, thanks for being vulnerable, let's make sure this doesn't happen again. That's really, really, really crucial. And like, which is what happened with my development from going to D2 to Ivy League to now. Those, 5 years, I was able to make mistakes and be in environments where it's not great, but let's work on it. I'm in an environment. It's more like, why did it happen? And it'd be a totally different conversation. And I wouldn't have it any other way. I still make mistakes, but they're nowhere as impactful as they would be when I was, 6 years ago.
Yeah, that's a perfect way, I think, to sum it up too, because being it's hard to say it because like people don't want to say that making mistakes at like a lower division level or like when you have multiple teams, like let's be honest, a lot of most Ivy League athletes aren't really looking towards professional after that. They're going to school for a outrageous career. Like they already kind of know what they're doing, and the Ivy League sets them up for that. The same as some the service academies. Now there are definitely outliers, but like service academies, like you're going to commission in the military. Ivy Leagues, you're going to be a lawyer, doctor, whatever else comes out of there. I couldn't tell you. But they set it up that way where like their dead weeks are 2 weeks long. So like athletics is definitely secondary to academics, and Division III, it's written in the rules that way, where it's supposed to be like everything is voluntary outside of competitive season. So it affords coaches kind of a little buffer to make those mistakes and kind of learn. And even if you're at a bigger school when you intern or you kind of start the mentorship process, like your mentor is supposed to give you opportunities to kind of fail. Otherwise, you won't learn and you'll never be prepared, like truly prepared for when you get a high performance job, you get a high pressure job in a conference where the game on the line and like your mistake could mean wins or losses. And then the margin of error is even smaller. And I think a lot of coaches, young coaches coming up, just see some of the logos or they see the positions and they think because like they were volunteering with one of those high performance like programs or they were around like a well-known coach that they're next in line for it. And it's like you're light years away from that and you haven't even there's a difference between assisting with a team and then having your own and
Mm-hmm.
then owning all those mistakes and being the person who when the program goes on the board when the athlete actually executes it like it's all on you if you were the person kind of contributing it to and assisting to it like you get none of the blame but you somehow reap the rewards like it's a fail safe so I couldn't agree more like getting and kind of progressing in those environments and learning as much as possible making mistakes and you should look back and kind of reflect and kind of be bashful about like what you did and then
Mm-hmm.
hopefully improve. So
Mm-hmm.
that no, that's great. That's great to kind of collect all this experience and now get to fine tune it into the two programs you have because now you wear so many hats in your role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you kind of look back on it, is you talked about all those different positions. Was there maybe one of those that was like maybe a defining moment that kind of solidified you in the career, or was there like a really big lesson that you've kind of learned thus far that really you think someone else could pull some value from, whether it be like a loss, a mistake, or something that was really successful that you think would benefit someone else coming up?
Yeah. Just because you have success at one school doesn't mean you're going to have it at the next, because it's a different environment, it's different personalities. And I had that naiveness when I went from Swarthmore to Penn, had a really good success, had um, a lot of great relationships, had an amazing boss. And went to Penn, it's not that I didn't have those things, they were just different people. And I thought I could like mimic exactly what I did and bring it to the next doorstep. And I was wrong. And um, so the big take home message is observe, take notes, track, ask questions. Like, don't just think you're gonna walk through the door and go get the ground running. Like, it actually takes way more effort out of you being the newcomer. Like you're the new one, not them. There's already things that they do and how they do them. So yeah, observe, like ask what's already been done, repeat it, even though you may hate it. Like just repeat it. It's gonna be 4 weeks. It's not that big of a deal. And then, track it, track interactions, track how they move, track how the coach likes things, how the coach talks, and it sounds a bit much, but the questions you ask are really important because it shows whatever questions you ask shows what you observe and the amount that you understand what they're trying to do. So questions are really important. And then also, if you don't ask a good question, you also aren't providing yourself more insight. So I take very serious that like whatever I'm doing is to only emphasize and to build what they're trying to do. Like someone goes, what's my agenda with the programming? I go, well, coach wants this, this, this. They're like, no, what do you want? I was like, I don't have a want. I want to win a championship. Like it's not about what I want to see. It's about what needs to get done for them to be the best they can be. So I've learned that through any time I'm with something, a new program or a new school, I've learned that lesson through making that jump of like, or making new relationships. I need to go about this way so I don't put my foot in my mouth later or like make a mistake that I can't undo.
No, I like that. It's a good point to like kind of reiterate too. What you want is based off like what the coach wants, because I think as soon as strength coaches start putting kind of their full beliefs into what you do, and don't get me wrong, like having kind of philosophy and having things that you're kind of drawn to, like means to an end, like tools in the toolbox that help you kind of elicit the adaptations you want to see like within your training, like that's different. But what I'm saying is if your main goal is to like make them really good at Olympic lifting, like just as an example, and that's completely contraindicatory and takes them away from what their success on the field is and what ultimately the coach wants and what the players want, then you're doing them a disservice.
Yep.
And I know coaches hate to hear it and lots of people hate to hear it, but coming in and slow playing it, just like you talked about, and really seeing what they're doing now, because a lot of it could be very successful. You could be replacing a coach that they really liked and they left for certain reasons, or it could be a coach that they completely didn't like, and you might come in and replicate the exact same things that they didn't like from the previous coach. There's so many things that could come in, like you come in guns blazing, could really put people off because it's a hard line to run. But you, like you said, you're the newcomer. Like when you came in, how did you balance that line? You talked about communicating with the coaches and kind of collecting and understanding and then asking questions so that they're probing enough where they realize like, hey, I'm trying to learn, but this is like by me asking this question, like this is the state of my understanding currently. What was there anything else practical that you kind of did, maybe not so much with the sport coaches, but also like with the rest of the staff and support staff to kind of solidify yourself within the program? And then like at what stage did you kind of feel comfortable?
Yeah. Well, I came in a tough spot. It was in season 2021. And um, the head coach knew that she had a really, strong team. And she was like, I think we have a chance to like win the Big Ten championship, which would be the first for Rutgers, all programs across. And I came in, I'm like, that's so exciting. Like, that'd be amazing to join. And then, I just had nice reminders of just like, don't mess it up. Like, don't, from all different angles, like, don't mess it up. And I'm like, sounds great. And so, like, I just thought, like, how could I not mess it up? Which is like such the opposite way you normally think about it. You're like, how can I impact? Like, how can I help? And like, how can I, make the difference? And my thought was like, how can I not mess it up? There were 6-year athletes on that team. There was freshmen on that team. And again, it's like that same dialogue of like, you have a wide range. and like how do you make impact with a wide range of different athletes. And for me, I was like, get these 6-year athletes just to survive, right? Like, how can I get them to survive? So it was a team training, but very group bucket oriented. And buckets are great. Like sometimes a complete individual is not doable with field hockey team. I think you can get away with doing it. Like you could individualize each athlete. But at the time, with so many new things, I just made buckets. I'm like, broken kids in this lift, broken kids are doing this, like non-broken, but like 30, 40 plus minute athletes doing this lift, and then complete developmental athletes doing this workout. And that was the first time they ever had that, like as a program, the first time ever. And that way I bought a lot of buy-in of being like, okay, like she has tools and things she can do to keep us on the trajectory. And then when it came to, load monitoring, it was just giving insight and hints, be like, okay, like I would potentially think about this. Not really saying like we shouldn't be doing this or we need to do this. It's just providing information. And then if they had questions or wanted my input, then I would give it, but I would never just give it. Which now I'm in a position where I should go, Michelle, are we hitting things we need to hit? Are we not hitting things we need to hit? Or even if it's in the moment, I'll be like, hey, we're getting close to this target. And then I just go, what do you want to do? So it's transformed there because it's still very much in this mutual respect of like, I'm just here to give information. You do what you got to do, and like, it's so vague. I know I'm being very vague, but that's where I've had the most success. Because like no coach, including a strength coach, wants to be told what to do. Right? Like, I don't want someone telling me that like I can't do singles at 70%. I'm like, it's 70%. What are you talking about? Like, but I just think like that's really important. Yeah, I think I went on a tangent right there.
No, that was a good tangent. And I think you're right too. You're right. Coming at that approach, I feel like when you do that, like you provide information from load monitoring or like feedback from the weight room, anything that you want to do, especially when you come up to kind of the head person of the program, like talking about like the head field hockey coach, when you approach them in that manner, like it, to me, especially in the beginning, it's like too many cooks in the kitchen. Like you're supposed to provide those things if kind of prompted and asked. And if you're a part of a high performing team, that head coach ultimately makes the final decision and but everybody else has an opportunity to weigh on it if if that coach like gives them the opportunity to provide that information. So that's all you're supposed to do at that point. And then you hope that you have an opportunity to say, hey, this is my 2 cents, but ultimately it comes down to you. And then I think as that relationship develops, more and more, you don't even have to have any like additional conversations. Be like, well, this is what Michelle says, so this is what we're going to go with.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen overnight, and it's definitely taken a couple of years for that to develop. And I'm sure, like as time progresses, it'll get to a point where that's where it becomes. It's just, yep, here it is.
Well, she's a great person. Like she's just a fun person. She's a great person. She's super competitive. And like you said, over time, we just have really good conversations and like good success. Where like now she's the jokester being like, whatever the boss says. I was like, no, like this is you, lady. Like this is not me. So like it's really her. Like she is a diamond in the rough. Like she's a special person and she's a great person. But with her personality and her true like open-mindedness, like that's why I think part of how we do things is because of her.
That was great. And then I like what you talked about the buckets too, as well, because it's such a simple thing, but even to just kind of separate the team into kind of separate needs, or even based off like where you came in right in the middle of in season, just kind of managing minutes or just managing like training load for some of those players. And obviously, like if you've got 6-year players and they're still around, they're definitely playing. It's not like they're redshirting at that point in time. So you got a bunch of freshmen that are probably not seeing the field very often. So it's easy to kind of group them in separate places and start thinking again for the long term, and not just the short term with like surviving and getting through a full season and trying to compete for a Big Ten championship, but like what's the next year look like for some of these incoming, like these redshirt girls that are going to potentially be starting next year when we turn over. And that builds a huge amount of buy-in, because to them, we know kind of like, okay, it's multiple programs going, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
individual. You can still manage it because you created it, and as long as you know the way, like how the room flows and everything. But to them, they're like, oh, they really know what they're doing. Like they put me in this group. I'm not with them over there. So
Mm-hmm.
it must make sense. Has not coming from like a field hockey background in the very beginning, have there been any other things that really kind of helped like build buy-in with those athletes? And then the same goes for like rowing too. Like it's a very large group. Sometimes you have to put them in separate areas and maybe work them in multiple sessions. But how do you start to kind of build buy-in with them? Because you're definitely not spending nearly as much time with them like at competitions or at practices compared to field hockey.
Yeah, yeah. With the field hockey buy-in, it's the same. It would be the same as rowing and vice versa. It's like taking the time to actually understand their sport. And with having a soccer background, there's definitely more connections, like in the way that the tactical play may happen. There's still differences, and like I still love asking questions and like, hey, why would you have this girl, be in this position versus this? And it's still a lot of fun. So like it's more familiarity, but there's still things like how to do like a reverse shot. Like that's been super fun to learn, and like being on the pitch and just spending time and getting to know them. Like we have USA athletes, and then international athletes, and like learning just the things about them. Like I had an athlete give me her like Dutch pre-workout candy the other day, where it's just loaded with vitamin B6 and vitamin C. Like, but it's dope. Like it's great. Like it's just getting to know them. The same thing with rowing, and it's making that time to go to their workouts, get on the launch, be present, and to get to know as many as you can. And like 75 girls is definitely a lot, but they're also amazing people that they understand that there's a lot of them, and they're like, it takes time, and it takes time for relationships regardless. So for rowing, like there are some badass girls. Like they they work really hard. They're some of the most resilient people I've ever met. Um, and they inspire me all the time. Like super cool people. So like we just had a great workout yesterday, and I'm just like, they're a reason why I come to work, because they're such great people. So I think what creates this buy-in is just with that program or any program is just like your willingness to get to know, build relationships is slow, like there's a coffee analogy. Like I'm an espresso like coffee enthusiast. The best coffee takes the longest brew. And like that's relationships. If you want a really good relationship, you invest in it for a very long time, like not like the one-off interactions and things like that. And so I think that's how I've created buy-in. Like, yes, the workouts are really hard, but I think it's hopefully who I am is creating more buy-in.
No, I like that too. And thinking about it, obviously, like with having that many athletes, it's hard to have like a touch point with every single one for 2 or 3 sessions a week when you're seeing them at lifts, or you're going out to kind of when they launch at practice. It's still difficult to have like those unique conversations if they're just kind of forced. You have to think of long term, and you have to be in a place for a long time, and like have the resources around you, and then be committed to that place. So that it's awesome to kind of see like year after year you able to kind of develop those things, and then I think that's the one thing in college sports I hope it gets more towards, where people are able to kind of stay in a place for a long period of time. And your sport coaches are able to do that at the moment. Hopefully you're able to do the same thing and kind of see your athletes go from freshman to senior, or maybe not 6 years, but if that ends up
Yeah.
happening again.
Yeah, my freshman class is gonna graduate next year and it's wild. Like my freshman class is gonna graduate and I'm like, I think I'm gonna bawl my eyes out. This is it's like they're literally your babies, like they're graduating. It's crazy.
Will this be the first time that you've been at a place long enough, like freshmen will graduate?
Yeah. Penn, I was close. Penn, but what also was amazing was that this past year they a good bit of them graduated and I got to see it through like social media and stuff. And some of them went from their 4-year Penn because you can't play collegiately at Penn in your as a graduate. So they went elsewhere, and I got to see them be super successful, like in the SEC or wherever else they went, in or the ACC. I had a couple kids go to Duke, and it was just like, wow, it's really cool to see you succeed in your final career. Like and it was just all like I even, sent them a few voice messages. I was like, I can't believe it. Like, this is crazy. Like, you're an adult, but you also succeeded. Like, this is
There you
awesome.
go. That's
Yeah.
awesome. It's definitely I didn't get that feeling until like I was at Fresno State and I was there for almost 5 years, and I finally got to that point. I was like, this is definitely weird. It's definitely cool to see them come back to, like, after a while, and see like how their lives have changed when they're outside of college sports or outside of the university. But I being at so many places like young in your career, you never even like think about it. And also you're like almost the same age as them. So it never occurs to you until you start getting a little bit older and you start realizing like, oh yeah, there's more when they leave, like their life still kind of goes on. And it's definitely a cool feeling. You'll enjoy it when you get to that graduation point, but not
Yeah.
not till the season kind of wraps up in the spring. But
Mhm.
um, we didn't really touch on this because it never seemed like it was in the forefront of anybody's mind and never really occurred to anybody. But there's not a lot of, and it's changing now, but there was not a lot of like female strength coaches like early in my career, and I'm sure kind of the same in your career. You had a few mentors that you were fortunate to be around, and now the profession is definitely changing a lot more. I see the importance of it a lot of times. Like I've worked with a lot of great female strength coaches, and you could definitely see like the athletes, especially like the female student athletes, like get empowered and interact with their coach, and to have kind of that presence around. Um, in your opinion, kind of like working with female athletes and like hopefully seeing more in the profession grow up and like get into it. What do you think like strength coaches or maybe the profession whole can maybe do a better job of like being more welcoming or encouraging the like female coaches like to join the profession? Or do you not, kind of like from our conversation the same way, do you not really see a difference? Or because it is definitely trending in the right direction, it seems like.
Yeah, there's definitely more females for sure. From like the first conference I went in like 2012 or 2000, yeah, 2012. That was the first NSAA conference I went to. Way more females now, for sure. Like this, CSCCA, they hold like a woman's, brunch, and the room is like busting at the seams, which is awesome. Like it's really cool. I think, the it's not in my opinion, there's lots of things you could go the rabbit hole down, what could be better. But honestly, it's what athletics can do to make it better. If I'm being honest, like I think athletics, the university side of athletics, I mean, you're not faculty, you're staff, and those benefits are different. And maternity leave is different, So, um, to be short, like it's what athletics could do different for females. Um, is there a pay gap? is there not a pay gap difference between male and female strength coaches? Is there difference in maternity leave? Like, is there maternity leave? It's just like those reflections that I think an athletic department, if they thought having female strength coaches were like the utmost importance, having those reflective conversations.
Right. No, I always like to ask that, and I try to preface it and not ask every female strength coach we bring on.
That is okay.
But to me, it's kind of important because, and I have a bone to pick with the NCAA all the time, but one of the big things is like we talk about Title IX, and I know it's not directly like female to male, but there's a definitive line of like what the ratio needs to be. And every time I go to a facility and we talk about like training and like what we need for the weight room, the first thing I say is like, well, we don't have female bars. It's like you guys talk about, well, we have 18 sports and 12 of them are female. How come we don't have female bars? Well, it's not important. We have bars. I was like, okay, well, I guess Title IX really doesn't mean anything to you, or you would drop everything and just buy these bars right now.
I'm really
Because
glad you brought that up
I
because
say it at every
so our
school I've ever been
staff,
at.
yeah, so one of our staff members, Becky, she brought that up 2 years ago. I'm not gonna lie, never crossed my mind because of like just what you're used to, right? Like
Right.
just used to things being placed, and she brought it up, and she is the workhorse of our budget, and she was like, hey, I think this is important, and it followed up the chain, and admin heard like, oh, we didn't even know this was something that would impact female athletes. And they're like, 100% do it. And so every week, so we have 3 weight rooms, and every weight room, we call it a training bar, but every weight room has a training bar
There we go.
because there's definitely male athletes that need it. So
Yes,
it's
I
a
can
training.
attest to that.
In my book, it's a training bar. It's a lighter weight training bar. But it's great because I had a field hockey player. She's graduating now. Maybe she'll come back, but she's graduating. And she has the tiniest little mittens, and her hand can encapsulate the bar. So like for certain things, that bar was great for her, you know. So yeah, it's at the end of the day, like a part of me hates, I love machines. It's a love and hate. I love machines, but I hate machines because if you're a certain stature, it's not made for you. But it's great for training, right? Like to be good to joints, but good and good training, and how many pieces of equipment are made for a female stature, let alone a petite female stature. So yeah, it's just hard. It's hard, the emphasis of female training is still like in its beginning ages, of like the importance and the impact, and like have they really had the same opportunity? And the answer is like right now, kind of yeah, in my opinion. I think it's kind of yeah, like it's getting better for sure. And I think at Rutgers, it's pretty great to be honest. But I think nationally, like it's kind of yeah.
Hopefully we're getting better and we're trending in that direction. But I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about, and like you working with your sport coaches about the load management and talking to them about like what you're getting from feedback from Catapult. You're educating them, you're kind of bringing them the information, and you don't really want to go out and say, hey, this is what you should do. Because like sometimes that's super abrasive, but like going to administration and saying, hey, um, we don't have any female bars, like we need this, and then like make them aware, because you might elicit the same reaction that you all had, was, oh, we didn't even know there was a thing. And it's kind of that old quote is like, now I'm blanking on it too. I'll forget it.
Well, so it makes me think you don't know what you don't know,
Yeah, that
right? Like if you don't know it's a problem, how do you know to solve it, kind of thing.
exactly. And your job is to bring that to light. And if they're kind of just operating in a status quo, they're never going to know that there's really a problem if you don't actually bring it up. And hopefully more things like that kind of trickle down, and we can educate administration, and I think that'll have a big impact on more staffing, like you talked about, like maternity leave and having more females on staff. Because if predominantly or like more than 50% of our sports are going to be female, like it'd be nice to have more mentors like in the profession that are coaching and leading some of those young women as well. Obviously, like we never know if it's really going to tip the scales and go all the way from like bald white guys all the way over to have more females and have it be a 50-50 split.
Mhm.
Um, but to at least have more opportunities and then just increase staffs altogether so we can start working with more like fewer teams and give more to those teams, I think is not going to hurt anybody in the long run.
Yeah. I think there's been conversations like over the years with me and like also my experience of like why female coaches there's there's a huge like I think not noticed benefit of a female strength coach is actually when she works with a male team because like any athlete everyone has different backgrounds and everyone has different experiences and so if that male athlete hasn't had to have like a consistent a prominent a confident a just like an overall just like powerhouse of a female in their life. They haven't had the experience of how do you interact, how do you communicate, how do you coexist if you don't like each other, how do you coexist? You know what I mean? And I'm 100%. I know I'm not made for everybody. Like I know everyone's not gonna like me, and that's okay. We just need to get the job done if you don't like me. You know what I mean? And but I had that experience at Penn where, at the time, working as an intern, but then professionally working with Miguel Rivera, he was like, hey, if you want to help with football, I would love that. And I'm like, down there in a second. And, a lot of those gentlemen like didn't have that experience. And at first it was like oil and water. But then through conversation and understanding and them knowing like how I was training, because at the time I was powerlifting. So like, okay, this girl can do this, then like she could actually help me. Like one of the coolest moments I've ever had was I was doing a mock powerlifting meet with two coaches there at the time, and football was coming in 5 minutes. I was doing deadlift, and they're like, get it done. And I'm like, we're going to start lift. He's like, you can't stop now. Like, finish your lift. And I was able to like PR with the whole set of guys there. Most electric thing I've ever been a part of next to winning a championship, like just electric. And then awesome, it was their max day. So then it built this trust of like, well, she could lift 315, then she can help me do like 4 or 5 or whatever. Like she knows what she's doing. And even though it's like, yes, I'm a coach, like I know how to do that. Not everyone has faith, like you got to see to believe. So like that impact to me is like I love my female teams with all my heart, but a part of me thinks that experience for a male athlete is priceless to work with a female. And we're lucky enough that at Rutgers, Abby Goldberg is working with men's soccer, and I'm just so excited for her to work with them and like to be that person, like to be that strong, confident female with a male team. And I'm just so stoked for her.
No, that's every female coach I've talked to has like one of those stories where they were working with a baseball or football team, and you get some guys that have never been around like confident women before, or like someone that's kind of telling them what to do or helping them with the lifts, and then like a head coach will come up and be like, she squats more than you pound for pound, and the guy's like, what? And like that's all, or they see you actually training, which is another key thing for any intern and any upcoming coach. Like training only benefits you, especially if your athletes see it. Like that's instant credibility. And to like not like, were you even working with football at that time yet, or had you just started?
I would say like Miguel, I think I gained Miguel's trust and he was like, do you want to,
Oh, there
like,
you go. That
um,
got your foot completely like in the door and through the door at that point then.
yeah, I don't want to put words in his mouth. So I'm going to assume that I gained his trust. And then he was like, yeah, you're good. You're good enough. You can come help. like him and I have that very like brother sister relationship, like busting each other's shoes. So I would say he said I was good enough to like to come help. And like forever grateful. I mean, like he took any availability that I was able to give and to come help. And I would say I got a lot more out of it than the team got just from like a total experience. But I just think that's an unforeseen female strength coach benefit to working with male teams. And, um, I'm glad I had the opportunity because like that's what I tell other female coaches like that are if they have an opportunity to work with a male team, like take on the challenge. You think it's a challenge, but like you're an underdog and underdog is a superpower because they
Right.
don't think much of you. They don't expect a lot out of you. So like allow yourself to take that slow brew and like show them why you're the force to be reckoned with that you are.
No, that's great. And it's great advice too. And it's definitely a good experience to have more female coaches working with male sports. And like I've always enjoyed working. Some of my female teams that I've had in the past are my favorite, like by far. And every time I go to a place, I always I try to make sure that I do have like an even split because sometimes the women's teams just balance me out and the guys will rile me up or like vice versa, whatever it is. And it's nice. It's always nice to have multiple teams and be able to bounce them out. But yeah, some
Mhm.
of my female teams are hardworking and they're fun to be around, and it definitely changed my mood like on the days when the guys are annoying me. So I'm sure it goes the same to say for a female coach working with the guys as well. And it's just more experience, it's more floor time. You might find it passionate. Like we see nowadays, there's so many female coaches in the NFL and places like there's referees in the NFL. There's so many things changing like with sports. Um, it's not a guys only club for a lot of these things anymore. And it's cool to see that if you're confident and you know what you're doing and you want to gain the experience, you can definitely go out and do it. And more people are willing to allow any coach to come in and do that. So definitely got some good experience with that. So that's an awesome story, coach. Hey, like any good training session, we end the show with a finisher. So I got 4 quarters, 4 questions, and maybe overtime.
Okay.
So we'll go rapid fire. Or you can take your time if you got a good story or anything you want to expand on. But you ready?
Yeah.
All right. First one I got for you. Biggest influence in the strength and conditioning profession. And since you did multiple strength sports, favorite athlete in strength sports
Ooh.
or growing up, I'll give you that.
Biggest influence, I mean, from a longevity standpoint, I think from like then to now is Stephen Brindle. He's been a mentor from like almost day one to still now. Like I can still contact him to this day. So if you don't know him, look him up. He's with the Sixers right now. He literally knows like he's telling me everything about plyometrics. Like he's the encyclopedia. Like he should write a book. Stephen write a book. Um, I mean, he is an encyclopedia of strength conditioning. He's one of the most well-versed people I think I've ever met in my life. And he's somebody that I can always go to. Like when in doubt, he'll pick up the phone and he'll tell me, like, hey, I'll call you back later. But like if I was gonna name one, there's many, but he's one of the many. Favorite strength athlete. I mean, it's just so corny, but when I was bodybuilding, Coach Seal would put on, I was going through this phase of 7x7 safety bar squats, and I had to do it each week. I had to decrease the total time it takes to do it. Talk about a metabolic um, workout, makes you want to puke. And there was this point where I was starting to like dread it, and he just put on Kurt Kowalski like squatting 1,000 pounds, and that's one of the, like that's one like it's kind of weird, but like that's the guy.
All right. All right. See that's why I wanted to keep it as strength sports because I was interested to see where it was going to go.
Yeah.
All right. So when you're not coaching, you're not in the weight room walls, you're not traveling. with field hockey. What can you be found doing? What are some of your hobbies that kind of recharge you?
Oh, definitely cooking. I'm a big cook. Love to hike. And my 4-year-old nephew, he is he is so much fun. It's really family, but like that, my nephew, he is like he brings out like the kid in me again. And I'm a quite goofy person, so it's like, oh, there's my bud. Like he's who I can be goofy with. So it's my nephew. I love to cook all range of food. Like whenever I bring in my meal prep for the week, everyone tends to go like, what is that? So it's like I really like to cook. I've just started to bake bread the past year. Good and bad. But and being home and whenever I can get away on a trip with my boyfriend, that's probably, so this year we took a gap, but the previous year we went to Washington State and Oregon, and that was a soul reviving trip. Like it makes me want to move out there, even though I'm not going anywhere. If I could, I would.
All right, there we go. Hey, so if you weren't coaching, what do you think you would be doing as a profession? And since you did bodybuilding and powerlifting, which was your favorite of the two?
Okay. If I wasn't in strength conditioning, weirdly enough, I think I'd be in dermatology because the skin is just really cool. It's the outward of what's going inward. And I'm very much like, I love the human body. Like I just think it's one of the coolest things. So I think I'd be in there because I've taken a different approach to like my own well-being. And if that like, if my skin is looking a type of way, I'm like, what am I neglecting? What am I doing? What am I not doing? Like over the years getting old, I've gotten autoimmune diseases. So like, um, like just generally that like very, very refined health. I would probably go somewhere along that or dermatology. Out of powerlifting or bodybuilding, I I think I would do, I've actually said it, I would probably do bodybuilding again. Like I'm like leaning toward doing that again and trying to figure out how to do it in season. Um One, aesthetically, it's super fun. Like to see yourself evolve in 2 months is like addicting to me, I guess. But also the fact you can get the best of both worlds, like because I would do power building for the at least however trajectory along that I would train. I would do power building and then go straight into the awful method of weaning and still building. So I think from a mental standpoint, I think I would do bodybuilding again.
Okay. So if you're setting up an ideal training day for yourself, maybe it is power building at this point. What is playing over the radio, and what is your best post training meal if you're not cutting for a show?
The music is going to depend on the day. 90%, it's definitely going to be some type of like angriness. It could be angry rap, it could be angry rock, it could be angry alternative. Definitely more of like an angsty person. So like angsty punk rock, that's even better. I grew up lifting with steel where it was Sirius XM and it would be like bony. I don't remember, but it'd be like boneyard station where all it is like just like hardcore rock. I don't think I would go that far. But and my post meal, if I wasn't cutting, would be shepherd's pie or a quarter pounder, like California style, with like a fried egg, a sunny side egg, turkey bacon, avocado, and then no bun with just like a plate of French fries, just a valley of French fries.
Not a bad training day. Hey, so
Yeah.
for the last one I got for you for overtime, what has been your favorite either under the bar or favorite coaching memory so far?
Under the bar was probably like deadlifting 315. Like I started from deadlifting 65 pounds in the beginning of my career to deadlifting 315. I was like, wow, that's possible. That's pretty cool. Like just to see that progression and like to know what it took to get there, like that was really cool. Um, from a coaching's perspective, I think from still the short time that I've been here, like to have relationships that even though I don't see them every day, I hear from them. Like winning's great, and it's my favorite thing ever. I don't like to lose. Like my athletes know. I'm just as pissed as they are when we lose. But the relationships, it's almost like unexplainable. Like I have an athlete that's in the Netherlands now, and I talk to her probably just as much as I do my friends. It's just cool. It's like the people you get to experience along the way, and just like how special they are and how much they impact you as much as you potentially can impact them.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique relationship like between a coach and an athlete, and having the time to kind of spend with them like on the road, like at practice, at lifts, like oftentimes you end up being their therapist, you end up being their friend, like their mom or their dad, like their brother or sister, like you're there for a lot of stuff. So to kind of develop those relationships over the years, it's cool to see them kind of go, but at the same time it's bittersweet. And it's awesome that you're kind of staying in contact with them and still have that relationship going. So definitely a cool experience. I think it beats pulling 315, but it's still it's three doing that is up there as well. So hey coach, I appreciate you coming on today. For anybody that has maybe any follow-up questions, wants to pick your brain or get a hold of you and kind of follow yourself and the rest of the Rutgers teams along, where can they get a hold of you?
On Instagram, my handle is coach and then underscore Pifer. You can message me there, or my email address is mpifer@scarletknights.com. And from there, if you send me an email, like we can connect through there or a cell phone, whatever you prefer.
Awesome. Hey, well, Michelle, I appreciate you coming on today. It was great to talk to you, and hope you enjoy the rest of your spring break. Get out there and hike and kick up your feet a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome.
Of course, I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. See ya.
That's it for this episode of The Strength Game. Thank you again to this week's guest and to our sponsors. Be sure to connect and keep up with our guests at the links in the description below. Remember to subscribe to us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider to stay up to date on all future episodes. Also, check us out on YouTube and CoachO'Brien.com, where you can find all the video versions of these episodes, as well as show notes, episode schedule, and much more. Comments, ratings, and reviews are always welcome and appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week for another great episode of The Strength Game.